Welcome to the deep dive. Today, we're really getting into the nuts and bolts of preparing for a big project. Specifically, what happens once your team is actually on location. This isn't the planning you do from, your office chair. This is the boots on the ground part, living among the people. And this deep dive, it draws from a body of work that calls this critical stage understanding and strategizing. We've got the keynotes right here, our mission today. To dig into these notes, pull out the essential stuff about why being physically present is so crucial and how really truly understanding the context shapes every effective step you take afterwards. Getting past assumptions, right?
Yeah, that's exactly it. This is really where the rubber meets the road. Any plans you made beforehand, they get tested right here, rigorously. This phase, it's where the real foundations get built. And this work, it really highlights that projects can stumble or even fail completely if this deep on-location understanding is, well, just skipped over or done poorly.
Right. And this work points to some things that are just non-negotiable for this phase. Things like a real, tangible presence, being willing to serve sacrificially, and a deep commitment to learning. So let's jump in and see how these actually play out in the practical steps. Okay, so the big picture first. This work talks about this phase happening after the team arrives, gets settled in, and it boils down to those two words, understanding and strategizing.
And the point is made really strongly. You just won't get very far without committing to actually living among the people. It's in that immersion that, reality hits. Culture shock can happen. And it demands that commitment we talked about, presence, service, learning. It's intense.
Yeah, and it highlights how failure often comes from not having solid cognitive, attitudinal, and relational foundations. So the goal here isn't just keeping busy. It's about, as the source puts it, laying foundations that empowers and multiplies, building something real, something that can actually grow there.
Exactly. And what's really interesting is that this kind of deep engagement, it's not some new management fad. This work points to clear biblical precedents for this kind of contextual understanding and adaptability.
Oh, really? Like what?
Well, you see it in Acts, for example. Chapters 13 to 18 show Paul and his team adjusting how they communicate.
Yeah.
Depending on whether they were talking to Jews or proselytes or Greeks. Same core message, but presented differently. Relevant points emphasized.
Okay. Adapting to the audience.
Right. And then Acts 14 to 20 shows how the people who did respond often became these crucial bridge persons, hosts for study groups. The faith spread because local believers connected it within their own networks. It wasn't just outsiders.
Makes sense.
And the classic one is Paul on Mars Hill, Acts 17. He clearly understood Greek philosophy. He even quotes their own poets. He connects on common ground before introducing something new.
Wow.
In fact, the sources argue the New Testament documents themselves are contextualized, written to specific people, specific places, specific times. That cultural awareness was fundamental, not accidental.
That's a powerful framing. It makes these modern ideas feel less like strategy checklists and more like, timeless principles for connecting across divides. Okay, so building on that, this work lays out a kind of roadmap. 6 key steps for this on-location phase. It seems like a progression. Number 1 is language and culture learning. Then 2, researching the context demographics, social stuff, religion, culture. 3 is determining the initial strategy. 4, building relationships, talking with others. 5 is about strengthening the team itself, figuring out roles, getting training. And finally, 6, drafting a comprehensive proposal. Let's dive into that first step then, understanding through learning.
Right, language and culture learning. And here's a fascinating insight from the material. This isn't just for when you go overseas. It's often needed even within your own culture.
How so?
Well, think about it. If you're part of, say, a specific Christian subculture, you might almost speak a different language than the broader culture around you. Plus, that broader culture is changing fast. New worldviews topping up. Different groups, age, class, background. They can have really distinct values, beliefs, even vocabulary.
So you could be a foreigner in your own town and not even know it. What about the more obvious cross-cultural situations?
Well, their language skills often go from important to absolutely essential.
Yeah.
The general guideline mentioned is usually at least a year of full-time dedicated language study. And crucially, while immersed in the community. For tougher languages, maybe longer. And the focus during that time has to be acquisition. That means intentionally cutting back on other activities that pull you away from that core learning.
So it's really foundational.
Totally. Language isn't just for basic chat. It's the key the source emphasizes for everything else: teaching, developing leaders, coaching. It unlocks worldview, how people think, their customs, manners. It goes way beyond just translating words.
The notes also mention supervised ministry experience, like internships. How does that fit in early on?
That's about putting the learning into practice. It lets people try using the new language in real situations. It deepens their appreciation for the culture through shared activity, helps build real friendships, and develops those culturally appropriate skills, things that actually work there.
Okay.
And there's a really important caution here, especially for people who are leaders back home. The notes point out that a strength in one culture can be a serious liability in another. There's this powerful quote from Oscar Muriu about some folks coming to Africa wanting to solve Africa. He says assertiveness, which might be valued elsewhere, can be seen as aggressive, even a curse. It can make the conversation feel over before it starts.
Wow, that's vivid.
It really highlights why you have to prioritize learning and understanding before you jump in trying to lead or fix things.
And reading up on history and culture is part of that too.
Oh, absolutely. Strongly recommended in the notes. People are shaped by their past, right? Their collective story, the land itself. The source contrasts Mexico and the U.S. historically, centuries of diverse groups, different colonial paths, versus, the open frontier idea shaping the U.S. History can open unexpected windows. Like understanding historical tensions in Latin America might explain why some areas are more open to new religious ideas today. Got to get a handle on the roots.
Which leads right into step 2, understanding through research. The material acknowledges the urgency people feel, that push to just start doing things, but it's really clear, successful always requires a basic understanding.
And that applies even if the cultures seem similar on the surface. The source uses this E1, E2, E3 model for cultural distance. And the rule of thumb is basically, the more different the culture, the more time you must spend just being a student of it. And importantly, the greater that distance, the more you'll need Christ's humility, love, patience. You just will.
Okay, so why is this research piece so critical? The notes give specific reasons, right?
Yeah, 3 main ones. First, understanding transforms the messenger. The source uses this lovely phrase, culture is the soul of the nation. It compares it to studying your fiancé. You do it out of love. This study shouldn't just be academic head knowledge. It should change you, build appreciation, make you a better bridge person.
Okay, transforms the messenger. What else?
Second, understanding is needed for effective communication and relationship building. Basic comms theory, right? Know your audience. Your words, your actions, they get interpreted through the listener's cultural lens. The analogy used is baseball and cricket. Look similar, bat, ball, but skills don't transfer directly. You have to learn the new rules, norms, and skills for connecting in that culture.
Right. Makes sense.
And third, understanding is needed to inform how you communicate the gospel itself, to make truth meaningful. The message has to land, be understood, verbally, non-verbally. You have to account for their worldview, potential misunderstandings, objections. Contextualization, as described here, isn't about watering it down. It's about making it meaningful, easier to grasp. Culture carries shared meanings, values, perceptions. Real communication happens when people understand and can genuinely respond based on that understanding.
So how do you get that deep understanding? The notes talk about using 3 lenses.
Yeah, it's a great framework, illustrated by comparing, say, Juan in Miami thinking about eternal life versus Ricardo in Honduras worried about supper for his kids. Different questions, different needs driving them. The idea is once you've got some language and basic cultural grasp, you start using these 3 lenses together.
Okay, lens 1, lived experience.
Exactly what it sounds like. You get in there. Experience life with people. It connects back to those biblical examples. Context isn't just theory, it's lived. There's a quote mentioned from David Harms. When you can see the world through their eyes, then you will be able to make Christ known to them. Powerful.
So what does that look like practically?
It means experiencing their daily grind, their social life, what they care about, worry about, enjoy, their fears, their beliefs firsthand. It's how you build confianza, that deep trust, which is everything. It might mean living right there, or just spending a ton of consistent time. And often, a local person, like that Ricardo figure, might become a fantastic cultural guide if they see your motives are genuine.
Okay, lens 2, demographic study. That sounds more like data numbers.
It is quantitative stuff, describing the population from the outside. Surveys, census data, questionnaires. But the key, the source stresses, is focus. You need specific parameters and particular questions. Otherwise, you just drown in irrelevant data, go down rabbit trails.
So there's a process.
Yeah. Collect data, analyze it, apply to strategy, evaluate. And it's cyclical, not one and done. Things change, you need to update it. Think about useful info like population trends, family structures, economics, education levels, social political stuff, religious affiliation.
Where do you find this data?
Government offices, chambers of commerce, libraries, universities, NGOs, newspapers, online, local groups, interviews too. Comparing data over time is really insightful for seeing trends. The source mentions a study on why some urban churches grow and others decline. Things like population shifts were key.
Are there pitfalls with this kind of data?
Oh yeah, reliability, accuracy can be issues. The source might have an agenda, right? Government spend, industry PR, NGO fundraising angles. And religious labels often tell you very little about actual belief or practice.
So what's the advice?
Use multiple sources, always, and back it up with your own observations and interviews. Don't just take official numbers at face value. Doing original large-scale surveys is usually beyond most teams, and there's a big ethical warning. Never use a survey just as a gimmick to start an evangelistic pitch if you aren't actually using the data for research. Find honest ways to connect.
But smaller, informal surveys can be useful.
Definitely. The source gives an example from Germany seminary students doing door-to-door surveys. Key things were careful design, short, useful questions, mix of open-closed, transparency, letter explaining purpose, anonymity, good training. It didn't give broad stats, but incredible insights into how people were thinking, what they needed, like finding a need for kids' activities led to starting clubs.
And there's a case study mentioned, Munich.
Right. Shows how demographic data where the city was growing, where internationals lived, single households directly shaped where the team chose to focus their efforts. Very practical.
Got it. Then lens 3, participant observation. How's this different?
Okay, so demographics is quantitative. The what is. Participant observation is qualitative. It gets at the what people think, the cultural meaning behind things. It's from ethnography. Helps you see things from the insider's view. The source quotes Spradley on stepping outside your own ethnocentrism.
And it's useful in complex places.
Especially. Modern cities have tons of subcultures, class differences. This helps you understand how your specific focus group fits into the bigger picture. You gather qualitative data observation interviews, focus groups to understand meanings, reasons, the why behind the what. The source is clear. Quantitative and qualitative aren't opposed. They're complementary. You need both.
So teams don't need to become anthropologists, but they can use these methods.
Exactly. Observation is key. Just getting out on the street, watching interactions, conditions, businesses, routines, taking notes.
And interviews for deeper stuff.
Yes. Understanding motives, perceptions. There's that great example of the couple in Montreal. Informal chats over coffee. Simple, open-ended questions. One asks, one takes notes. And their big discovery was that ambivalence towards Catholicism people felt hurt, but it's still tied to identity. The mother analogy they heard was so revealing.
What makes for a good interview in this context?
Attitude is everything. Genuine curiosity, care, sincerity, humility. That builds trust. And again, the ethical point. The interview was for listening, not a setup to preach.
How do you make sense of what you hear and see?
Keep a journal. Compare notes with teammates. Talk it through with a cultural mentor if you have one. And crucially, lay aside your assumptions. Don't jump to conclusions. Ask follow-up questions if something's confusing.
Focus groups are mentioned too.
Briefly, useful for seeing group dynamics, groupthink, but harder to do well. Needs a skilled moderator and a natural group setting. Not usually the first tool you reach for.
Okay, so after all this learning through the 3 lenses, the team is ready to craft a strategy. Step 3.
Right. This is the initial entry strategy, the plan for your first activities, your initial ministries. It needs to show love and share the message in ways that connect with both felt and real needs. And it has to consider opportunities where people open and obstacles. The idea of creating a respondent profile comes up here, like imagining your target person Unchurched Harry or Saddleback Sam.
To make it more concrete.
Exactly. Helps visualize who you're reaching. Focuses on 4 areas. Their felt needs, their life aspirations, their decision-making patterns, and which segments seem most responsive. It's a composite, remember. You still need to understand each actual person.
Felt needs seems pretty straightforward.
It often is. People respond when what you offer connects with what they feel they need: character, family help, hope, answers to social problems. And needs vary. In highly spiritual cultures, it might be about destiny or protection. In more secular ones, maybe emotional well-being, social connection.
And linked to Jesus.
Yeah, he often started with felt needs, right? Healing, food, but always went deeper to sin, separation from God. The caution is, don't do a bait and switch. Show how knowing Christ genuinely addresses the deeper issue behind the felt need. That Nairobi Chapel example working in slums is powerful here. Adapting communication stories, connecting different groups, practical generosity, raising local leaders. It all flowed from understanding needs.
What about life aspirations?
Good question. The gospel isn't just fixing problems, it fulfills deep longings. Humans are made for meaning, purpose, connection. These might look different culturally. Individualists might long for forgiveness, meaning. Collectivists might seek solutions to shame, desire harmony. You uncover these through those conversations, reading, interviews. The profile should capture how that God-shaped vacuum, as Augustine put it, is felt by these people.
And decision-making patterns. This sounds crucial.
It absolutely is, and hugely variable. Who decides? The individual, the family head, a council of elders. How do they reason? Linear logic, story, intuition. How do they view time? The notes stress identifying formal and informal group leaders. Who has influence? Gender and age matter too. In some places, reaching the male head of household first is key. If women or kids respond first, it might sometimes create distance within the family. You need to be aware.
There's a discussion of group decisions?
Yes, multi-individual decisions.
That's not
common in tribal or collectivistic cultures. The Lin Barney Mung example is used. Westerners often miss this, pushing for individual choices when the whole group is actually processing things together, maybe experimenting first. You have to understand and respect their process.
Okay, and the last part of the profile, responsive segments.
Basically, some people, some groups will just be more open than others at any given time. Good stewardship means focusing energy where there seems to be interest. The sources point to Jesus' parables, Paul staying longer in Ephesus because a great door opened.
So what makes someone receptive?
It's defined as an inclination towards something different. Openness to new ideas, change, spiritual truth. You can gauge it by things like, are they satisfied with life, willing to change? How committed are they to current beliefs? It varies a lot.
Are there common signs of openness?
The notes list several. People in personal crisis, going through big life changes, marriage, new job, bereavement, times of social upheaval, people who've recently moved. Also those in loosely organized religions, cultures with concepts of sin or a creator God, people disappointed with their current faith, and often young people exposed to new ideas, like students.
But with a caveat.
Always. Never underestimate God. He can reach anyone, but practically, wisely, you focus where the soil seems prepared. The goal is building relationships and sharing. A detailed case study from Ingolstadt, Germany shows this really well. They used demographic info, finding where sporting clubs were popular, new housing areas, a big clinic, the Audi factory to pinpoint specific groups. Then they tailored entry strategies. Joining clubs, starting groups for hospital workers, specific outreach to blue-collar workers. Very targeted based on research.
Okay, that leads us to step 4, building relationships. Once you've identified likely segments, the notes say spend serious time connecting.
Yeah, the suggestion is at least 50% of the team's time should be focused here. Part of this is making courtesy calls to official community leaders, principals, local officials, people you can find by their title.
There's more to it.
Oh, yeah. Even more important is building ties with what the notes call community gatekeepers. These are the informal influencers, respected elders maybe, or popular figures in the market, local media personalities. They don't have official power, but they have moral authority, influence. Getting their goodwill, their backing can truly open the door. And sometimes they become seekers themselves, like Sergius Paulus in Acts.
And this idea of people of peace.
Right, drawn from Jesus' instructions in Luke 10 and Matthew 10. People of goodwill who welcome you, offer hospitality, are open to listening. They can become crucial bridge people connecting you to their networks. You find them by being spiritually alert, observant, talking to people, attending events, asking neighbors. The notes say more on this comes later.
Okay, and step 5 is about the team itself, strengthening the team.
Absolutely critical. The leader's role here is huge, giving direction, helping people find roles matching their gifts and passions. This phase sets the team's culture, really. How they pray together, support each other, do outreach, make decisions.
Can be a stressful time for a team.
For sure. They're together constantly, under pressure, learning at different speeds. Some might feel ready to start ministry, while others are still deep in language study. Good preparation helps. The advice is often to let those who are ready start. Don't hold everyone back unnecessarily. Specialized training might be needed too. It's about taking the long view, empowering each member.
And the final step in this phase, drafting the proposal.
Right, the church planting proposal. It's about getting the plan down on paper. Why? To clarify focus, budget realistically, enlist prayer, communicate the vision clearly. You might have a broad vision earlier, but it takes those 6-12 months on location doing the research to really nail down the specifics. Vision for this place, core values, who you're focusing on, the actual evangelism and discipleship plan that fits here.
So it builds on everything done so far.
Exactly. Biblical principles, prayer, wise counsel, and all that hard-won understanding of the place, the people, the team. It rallies the team,
Yeah.
gets everyone on the same page. It's a work in progress. Sure, it'll evolve, but it gives clear direction.
What are key elements to include?
Identifying those priority segments clearly. Building on indigenous reproducible principles, stuff discussed elsewhere in the source material. And a concrete plan for discipling new believers, ideally in small groups they host themselves. It stresses planning intentionally to find and mentor local hosts and apprentices using that model assist watch leave pattern. Again, more detail later in the source. And the notes circle back here, all this understanding, all this research. Its purpose is action. It connects to 2 Peter 1.8. Knowledge should bear fruit, make you effective, not just sit on a shelf.
Right.
And it highlights 2 ditches to avoid. Jumping into evangelism without understanding, which is called foolish, counterproductive. And the other ditch, gaining all this understanding but then failing to act on it. That's seen as culpable negligence.
So the notes summarize concrete actions flowing from this phase. Things like read about the culture, talk to people about it, ask questions constantly, be present in the neighborhood, the market, meet sympathetic insiders, join local groups, track needs you see, build relationships with gatekeepers, influencers, those people of peace, use your talents to serve, practice hospitality, work hard on language, do those targeted surveys or interviews, discuss the results, get specialized training, and pray. Pray fervently.
Yeah, and there's that list mentioned, sidebar 10.1, with 20 questions to spark ideas for research and interviews. The goal is always getting to the why behind behaviors and values. Baffling answers can actually be really fruitful. They show where your understanding is thin. It's a long-term process, this deep cultural study, but you can have breakthroughs early on. The goal is developing those bicultural lenses, really seeing from their perspective.
It sounds challenging. Adjustments, team tensions, but the notes also mention joys.
Oh, absolutely. Unique joys in this stage, the sheer excitement of discovery, seeing doors open that, only God could have opened. The advice is, talk about your theories, enjoy the insights, don't feel guilty about the time it takes. Focused research prevents costly mistakes later.
That makes sense.
And maybe the most profound insight mentioned. As you learn about another culture, you always, inevitably, learn more about yourself. This whole phase is described as a potential period of deep inner growth.
So let's pull it together. This deep dive shows this on-location phase of understanding and strategizing is just vital. It's foundational. It's about deep learning language, experience, research. It's about investing in relationships and crafting a plan that actually fits the reality on the ground.
And it takes humility, right? To be a student again.
Yeah.
Patience to put in the time, real curiosity, and that deep commitment to try and see the world through others' eyes, using all the tools you have, quantitative and qualitative, to get the full picture.
And it's a process that changes you, the messenger, making the message itself truly understandable, truly meaningful for the people you want to reach. So as we wrap up, here's a thought to maybe wrestle with based on these sources. How might applying these principles, really digging deep to understand a group's history, needs, worldview, decision-making, how might that change how you approach connecting with people right in your own community, your own context? And what might you learn about yourself in the process of trying to see the world through their eyes? Thanks for joining us for this deep dive.